We have procedural programming and object-oriented programming, a way to write procedures or methods that perform operations on data. It is like writing codes and the compiler will compile your code line by line from top to bottom. But object-oriented programming is a way that you create objects that contain both data and methods. We will see many examples of object-oriented programming in a minute. What are the advantages of object-oriented programming? In object-oriented programming, you have clear structure. It makes the code easier to maintain, modify, and debug. Object-oriented programming helps you not to repeat yourself. It helps you to build reusable application with less code and shorter development time. Object-oriented programming is faster and easier to execute. You will see these advantages in the examples. What makes a programming language object-oriented? So in object-oriented programming, you have a class. And what is a class? A class is a template for objects, and an object is an instance of a class. For example, here we have the class core, and we can create from this class core many objects depending on type of car, the manufacturer, and etc. As you see here, we have Peugeot, Citroen, Opel, Moda. If it is not clear now, don't worry. I provide you enough examples that you know the difference between class and objects. So this is an example of a class. A class is non-primitive type in C#. Also in another object-oriented programming languages. So to declare a variable with the type class, you first use the type name class and then the name of your variable or your class. It is best practice or convention that the name of your class starts with uppercase letter and you use for the naming Pascal case. And inside a class, you can have fields or attributes. You can have properties. I tell you about properties in a minute. You can have methods and you can have constructor. I explain it from top to bottom. Here we have an attribute or a field with a type string and the name color and a value red. And the next one is private, type double, weight, and a value. So here you have a keyword, private, public, protected, internal. What are these? These are called access modifiers. Access modifiers are used for security to keep some data hidden from the user. So if there is no access modifier for a field or a method or a property, then that field, method or property is private. No access modifier, it is a private member. And then you have private. So actually, what is private member? A private member is only accessible within its class. Inside of this, if you inherit from this class, it is also not accessible. I teach you about inheritance later in this chapter. So private only accessible within its class, within the class itself, within this variable. Then you have public. Public is accessible for all classes and all objects outside its class. It is public. So protected is like private, but if you inherit from its class, you have access to that protected field or method or property. So you inherit a protected member but not private member. That's the difference between protected and private. Internal is only accessible within its assembly. Then you have constructor. What is constructor? This is a way to provide initial value for your class. This is used for that. You provide data for your class, initial data, when you instantiate an object or create an instance of that class. You provide some initial value to your class. And then here you have two methods, get car color and set car color. In the get method, we have type string, the return type is string, and it returns the value of private member color. The second one is that we modify the private member using this custom method. You can also achieve this using property. It is not mandatory that you name it like get or set. You can name it whatever you want, and only the content of or the body of the method is important, what it does and what it returns. Here is this is how to instantiate an object from a class or create an instance of that class. For example, here we create an object for citron, and citron, we say citron, and say model name citron, that model name that is we get the model name, and then here we want to get a private member citron.wait, and we get here an error because you have no access to private member from outside the class. And here is build tier. I want to access the build tier of this car. It is protected member. I also have no access to that, so this is like private. But if I inherit from this class, I will have this build tier that I can use inside the inherited class. And we change the course color, citron set color to white, and this will change from blue to white, or from red to white. You can get that when you get returns the value of the color field inside your object. So this one returns the value of the color attribute inside this object. You saw examples of access modifiers. So why access modifiers? It is for security reason and to achieve encapsulation. What is encapsulation? It is the process of making sure that sensitive data is hidden from users or hackers or bad users. To protect sensitive data from users or hackers, you must declare that data as private. If you want to have access to that or modify that data, you can use built-in functionalities or methods, the get or set, or you can create your own custom methods, as I showed you in the previous slide. Properties in object-oriented programming. What are properties? Properties are a way to read and modify data in a secure way, to read and modify private data. For example, think that these are inside a class. We have inside that class a private member, a private attribute called password type string. This is property. You have get method, you have set method. In the get method, we say return password, return the private member password. We have password lowercase and we have password with the first letter uppercase. So this is a convention that your properties, your methods are in Pascal case. And then you have automatic properties, like they also call it shorthand, that in your property you do not specify what it should return and what it has to modify, or what it has to return and what it has to modify. This is now we call it public int age. So you can change the age, the uppercase age, and you can get the age. You can directly modify the property itself. But here we have a different private variable or field inside our class, and we have property to get and set the value of the private field. But here in this way, in automatic properties, you directly set its own value. It is automatic, it is shorthand. This is also used to create your own type. I will show you an example of that. Here is the class. This class has also a constructor. It takes the ID of the user and it sets the ID of the user. We have here a private field name, and we use uppercase name property to return its value and to modify its value. And here it is, there is an automatic property with type date time. And here when we create an object of the class user, we set the user, we provide the ID like an argument. When you instantiate or create a new object from that class, this is how you provide value to your class through your constructor. We specify the type and the name, and we set the value of the field or attribute inside the class. Here we set the name, here we get the name using this property, and we get the age, and we modify the age using this automatic property. And here we get the ID, which is public read-only int ID, and we try to modify it because we specify here that it has to be read-only, so you cannot change it. You can provide value to a read-only attribute through constructor, but after that you cannot modify it. Inheritance in C#. What is inheritance? Inheritance is a way to take attributes, fields, properties, and methods of another class to reuse the codes from another class. Properties and methods in another class, if they are public or internal or protected, you can inherit them. So private members cannot be inherited. You can prevent inheritance by using sealed keyword before the keyword class. I show you that. Terms that are used in inheritance. You have base class or parent class, and you have private class or child class. Child class is a class that inherits from another class, and base class or parent class is just the class that is being inherited from. To inherit from a class, you use colon. Here we have the class person. It has a constructor. You can provide initial value when you create an object from this. You can give the name of the person, age, and ID. And here we have public attribute, name, age, ID, and a public method, display user. We have a class employee. We inherit from person. So when you inherit from a class that has a constructor, you have to create constructor inside your child class. And also the same way here, you use a colon to inherit from person. Here you also should use colon and use the base keyword to provide this data that you get via your constructor. So now this class employee has all these public members. Let us create an instance or an object of the class employee. So we instantiate a new object, new employee. We give the name, the age, and ID, and when we have access to the method display user. When you call the display user, it writes the user data to the console. Previously I told you about the class and object. So here this is the class, which is a template, and this is an object which is an instance of this class. Now I hope you see the differences between class and object. You can create unlimited copy or instance of the class person or the class employee. To prevent inheritance, you can use sealed before your class. A class also can have access modifiers. A class also can have private access modifier, protected, internal, public. Here we try to inherit from the class person, but we get here an error. The error says here employee cannot derive from cell type. Polymorphism in C#. Polymorphism means many forms. And why polymorphism? Polymorphism helps you to do different things with the inherited methods in a class. So in a class you can have virtual and override keywords to do different things with the inherited methods. We have three classes. We have the base or parent class animal, and then we have a derived class or child class dog that inherits from animal, and then we have cat, also derived from animal. Inside the class animal we have a public method play sound. So when you inherit from a class, you get all the public methods, attributes, properties. So we have play sound by default inside the dog class and cat class. Based on what animal it is, it has to play different sound. So we provide a default sound here like meow, and for the dog woof woof, and for the cat meow with more W's. When you call this method from play sound in animal. You get this for sure. And what would you get if you call play sound on dog? What do you think? And the same thing about this. Will you get meow with more W's and for the dog? Or will you get woof woof, or you will get the same as the base class? Ready? So let us see. We got for all three the same thing, even though we tried to change, because a dog will never meow. So we tried to change it, but it did not work. All the methods you inherit from the base class, they have the first priority. So polymorphism is a way to override this behavior. Totally not what you expected, right? So here we use the virtual keyword, an override keyword, to change the behavior of a method that we inherit from the base class. Now the content of play sound method is different from the base class. Let's see. Animal play sound meow, dog play sound woof woof, and cat play sound meow. So this is what we wanted and what we expected. Abstract class in C#. What is an abstract class? It is a class that cannot be used to create objects. You can also have abstract methods inside abstract class. Abstract method can only be used in abstract class and has no body. Why abstraction? Abstraction is for hiding certain details and showing only essential information to the user. So abstraction is for security. We have class TV and we use abstract keyword before the type class to make this an abstract class. Inside this abstract class we also have an abstract public method that returns a value of type double. As you see, it has no body. Here we inherit from the abstract class TV, and we here gave body or provide body for the method calculate discount price. You cannot instantiate or create object from an abstract class. So this is very protected. You can use it as a template to inherit from, but you cannot create object or instance of the abstract type or interface. So this is the error also says cannot create an instance of the abstract type or interface. But here TV new model, which is the child class, you can create an instance from the child class that inherits from an abstract class.